In a rare bit of good news in dark times, a bill that would have allowed Donald Trump to censor and politically punish those he disagrees with failed. It didn't actually pass. It will not be law, at least as of right now, thanks to the Democrats and one Republican, which is sort of the surprise of this story, but we'll return to that. The bill we're talking about was the Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act. It's a bill that we talked about in the members' content that we released on Monday of this week. Become a member, you get access to that sort of content. So it would have allowed the Treasury Secretary to unilaterally revoke the tax-exempt status of any nonprofit organization that they think is supporting terrorist organizations. We'll return to a little bit more about why that's way worse than maybe it sounds at first. But bear in mind, the opposition to this bill was led by Democrat Lloyd Doggett of Texas, and he said, all of us support stopping terrorism, but if he is on the march to make America fascist, we do not need to supply Donald Trump with any additional weapons to accomplish his ill purpose. So if you haven't been following this bill, you might wonder, well, why would this help Donald Trump in that way? So I'll explain. Under the provisions of the bill, the Treasury Secretary, who will be some billionaire, who knows, doesn't really matter, some billionaire, they would have been authorized to unilaterally designate any nonprofit group deemed to be a supporter of terrorism, giving the group just 3 months to respond to a notice. After those 3 months, if appeals were unsuccessful, which you'd be appealing to the Trump administration, so good luck with that, the group would be stripped of its 501c3 status. Such a measure would likely cripple any nonprofit, and even if an appeal was successful, according to critics, it would leave a mark that could scare away donors. And both of those are kind of the point. I want to be very clear. The Treasury Secretary would be able to say, this organization supports terrorism. That's it. You do not need to, you don't even need to tell the group why you're doing that or what the reasoning is. You don't need to supply evidence to anyone. You could and probably would do this to any organization you wanted to kill. You think they wouldn't try to make the case that Planned Parenthood is committing terrorism against fetuses or something? You don't think any organization supporting the Palestinian people or Ukrainian civilians or whatever would not be nuked from orbit by the new kind of mini God King Emperor Treasury Secretary that we would have? So they would 100% use this to cow nonprofits. And to be clear, not just as a retaliation. The fact that they would have this power would have an obvious and intentional chilling effect on these organizations. Any organization would be terrified that any stance they take, any comment they make, anyone they bring into their board, any protests they're a part of, anything like that could lead to them being destroyed. And so they would be very careful going forward. Now we have one negative little side effect to all this, or one aspect of the story, but Sharon, I'm curious what you think about this.
It's going to work exactly as intended, as you mentioned, exactly as it's designed. Planned Parenthood, progressive PACs and organizations as well. It's going to be very effective, particularly the dictatorship part of it, where I know you mentioned the word appeal, but if I'm the judge, the jury, and the executioner, then like I said, the dictator's going to win out at the end of the day. Look at your life, America.
I know. Well, thankfully, at least now it didn't pass. Now they could bring this back, on the other side, and at that point, maybe they can do it in both sides. We don't know. We don't know. Maybe there will be some Republicans that are against this. There was one, but before we turn to that Republican, I do want to mention the fact that, as I said, a Democrat led the opposition to this. The vast majority of the Democratic caucus voted against it. Not all of them, though. 52 voted in favor of the bill. 50 freaking 2. Because, and you might think, well, why would they do that? Why would they give Trump this power? Well, some of them might honestly not have a problem with it, but it was tied to a thing that would give tax relief to American hostages abroad. That's the sort of smokescreen that you put out just to provide plausible deniability. There's no reason those need to be tied, and they know that. And so there's a lot of names there. I want to put them up again. And some of them we're not surprised to see. Henry Cuellar and maybe Debbie Wasserman Schultz or whatever. But there are a couple that stood out to me. So Colin Allred, you already let us down, buddy. You need to go 2 for 2 on the last couple of weeks or whatever. Well, he did it. And anyway, not just him. Adam Schiff is on the list. Adam Schiff, who will be the next senator of California. That's where I am, by the way. California deserves the best senators in the country. We should be able to elect people who actually represent the bent of the state. And this is what we get. Adam Schiff voting to allow Joe Biden for a week and a half and then Donald Trump for 4 years to kill any I mean, this is like, this demands follow-up questions from media. And I know the sort of cover that they will give, but this is what they signed on to. Thomas Massie, by the way, is the Republican, Kentucky Republican, who voted against it. He is a libertarian. And look at that, a libertarian actually doing a libertarian-y thing. You know, there are still some of them. Not a lot. You have libertarians like Dave Rubin, who voted to stop people from being able to smoke weed in Florida and voted to stop them from having control over their body, you know, libertarian things. But anyway, there are the occasional libertarians who stick to their word at least. And so Thomas Massie gets credit there. And never before and likely never again. But there, he gets credit. Any other thoughts, Sharon?
I just don't know what to think. I'm waiting, and I was talking to a friend of mine this morning and last night. I'm just waiting to see how people we are used to defining and placing in certain boxes, even dependable boxes, and I don't mean dependable as good, I just mean we know who they are. They seem to be hedging, changing, whatever. And so I just don't know what to think about it yet. I think it has to shake out, and we'll know soon.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a look at these people, and we're gonna see what role they fill. Again, Adam Schiff elevated himself in the national figure as like, I'm the guy who will stand against Donald Trump. I'm gonna manage the impeachment of him, and I'm gonna stand against him, and then hand him massive powers to destroy organizations protecting people that I pretend to care about. They are telling you who they are. We're listening, at least. Not everyone will, but we are. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.